police officer or police officers and a member of the public at Manchester Airport last summer. A jury at Liverpool Crown Court found Mohammed Fahir Amaaz guilty on 3 counts of assault. They were unable to reach a verdict on 1 count of assault of another police officer involving Amaaz and his brother, Muhammed Amaad. Let me just give you that one more time. A student has been found guilty of assaulting police officers and a member of the public at Manchester Airport last summer. A jury at the Liverpool Crown Court found Mohammed Fahir Amaaz guilty on 3 counts of assault. They were unable to reach a verdict on 1 count of assault of another police officer involving Amaaz and his brother, Muhammed Amaad. I'm bringing in Nigel Nelson, a senior political commentator here at GB News, on this breaking and developing story. We've been waiting a long time to hear the verdicts on this. Nigel, what do you make of what we've just heard?
Glad we got a verdict at last. I mean, it's about time it happened. There was a lot of misinformation put out originally. We can see that when you try and film something, it doesn't always tell the full story. Now that we've actually got a conviction, obviously the jury can't come to a solution on at least one of them. But now we actually have a conviction. We get a much better picture of what really happened that day.
Yes, and of course, we saw all that footage being leaked. It caused quite a big furore across the press at the time, and social media was up in arms. This whole thing has been quite a saga. Glad to see it come to an end in some cases, but not all the verdicts were, of course, reached, Nigel. Do you think this is just one step in the police finally getting at least some of these guys charged, I guess?
Yeah,
it's been a long time coming.
And also the truth coming out. I think that's the most important thing from this. If you remember the outrage we all had when we saw what we thought was the police behaviour, without knowing everything else that had led up to that. So at least the truth has come out. It's taken a long time for it to happen, but at least it's here now. Yeah,
we saw again some more of that footage arrive last week, which I think showed some different angles we hadn't seen before, because previously we'd only seen that leaked footage, which I think then many people had started making their minds about what had happened. But of course, one verdict still hasn't been it hasn't been a unanimous decision, at least, from those brothers there. Do you think this is going to plaster on even further this? Lots of people are going to be commenting now about this another assault, because people will think this was a done deal. Do you think we can put this to bed, or this is going to plaster on?
I think it's time to put it to bed. I mean, we've now had a court case, which is what everyone demanded. We've now had a verdict. That should be the end of it. Yes,
OK, all right. We're going to bring you more on this shortly, but let me just read this back to you one more time, just so you guys at home all have heard it. A student has been found guilty of assaulting police officers and a member of the public at Manchester Airport last summer. A jury at Liverpool Crown Court found Mohammed Fahir Amaaz guilty on 3 counts of assault. They were unable to reach a verdict on 1 count of assault of another police officer involving Amaaz and his brother, Muhammed Amaad. Nigel, I think the bigger question, we were talking about knife crime before the break here. There seems to be this ongoing, at least going down, or the public perception of the police is just they haven't got the authority anymore. They haven't got the authority to reprimand people. People are fighting back against the police. Have we got an issue in the country now with people feeling that the police are just free game?
No, I think that this has always been the case, that the police, bear in mind, nowadays are much better trained, have a much better moral compass than, say, they had 40 years ago. So in that sense, that we can respect the police more. I mean, you were looking at what happened in London with Sadiq Khan. I mean, at the moment, it depends. It's a much more nuanced picture. I mean, London crime is actually lower than, only a little bit lower than average crime over the rest of the country. There are fewer murders now in London than there were when Boris Johnson was mayor. So things have changed a bit. I mean, Sadiq Khan himself says that he reckons knife crime is down 18% since 2016. So the figures that you quoted earlier don't seem to actually justify that. I think that we have a bit...
I'm dubious about Sadiq Khan's figures, but, you know, look, I mean, there's lots of debate around what the figures actually are, but I'm sure we will be able to get to the truth of them at some point. But I do think, I get this sense of feeling, and I was talking to you in the break earlier about this as well, Nigel. Saw this video the other day of a police officer trying to reprimand somebody, and then members of the public were coming up and attacking the police officer off the back of it. It feels to me, and this maybe goes back to what Nigel Farage and Reform's message is, that there does seem to be this feeling, perhaps you can debate whether it's true or not, but there is a feeling that Britain is becoming lawless.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is the answer to that. I do think the police have an extra problem because of social media. So what tends to happen is a police officer moves in on something and he's got 10 people around him filming what is going on. Now, that doesn't help. It makes it much more difficult for an officer to carry out their duty if they're being filmed. They're thinking more of the camera than what they're doing. So I just think there are extra problems the police face nowadays than they used to.
Yeah, and of course we were speaking to the former officer earlier on today, who's saying that those Conservative reforms have damaged the police, and he was listing a litany of things there. But police funding in many areas has been dropping off and dropping off. And one of the things, at least here in London, that was promised is that policing would increase. That is not looking likely. The Prime Minister has said that he expects people to see more bobbies on the street from next year. But the British public have heard these promises time and time again. And it feels to me that our police force is so stretched that when they have to respond to an incident like the one we saw with this Manchester airport incident there, what should have possibly just taken one or two police officers took a whole squadron of them almost.
Yes, I mean, I think that was an extreme example of actually the police having to act. I mean, what is going on at the moment is that Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is hiring 13,000 more police officers. It doesn't quite deal with the 20,000 the Tories got rid of, which didn't help matters. But the idea now is more neighbourhood policing. So to try and make communities feel safer and have your Bobby on the beat who's somebody you know. That is something that we used to have, where you'd always know your local police officer. Now people don't. Yeah.
Just very, very quickly, but do you think we've just given too much red tape to police officers and they've just been too soft and we need to move?
They're not being soft, but yes, too much red tape.
OK, good. Right, let's move on, because let's cross now to Liverpool Crown Court, where GB News reporter Sophie Reaper is there for us with the latest on this story. Sophie, give us everything you know.
Well, Alex, after 10 hours of deliberations, the jury came back and they were actually asked by the judge, Justice Flewitt, if they were given more time, would they be able to come to at least a majority verdict on all counts, to which the jury foreman responded that they would not. So the decision was made, in fact, that the judge would take the verdicts that they have been able to come to. So just to read those out for you, on count 1, which related to Mohammed Fahir Amaaz. That was an account of assault by beating. The jury found him guilty, and that was a unanimous verdict. On count 2, which related to both brothers, so Muhammed Amaaz and Muhammed Amaad, that was a count of assault occasioning actual bodily harm. With that, the jury were unable to reach a verdict on both defendants. For count 3, which was also a count of assault occasioning actual bodily harm, that was just relating to Muhammed Amaaz, the younger brother. The jury found him guilty, and that was a unanimous decision. Finally, count 4, that once again just relating to Muhammed Amaaz, the younger brother, that was the assault of an emergency worker. The jury found him guilty, but this one was a majority verdict as opposed to a unanimous verdict, meaning that 10 of the jurors agreed and 1 of them disagreed. Now, the situation that we find ourselves now is that the Crown Prosecution Service need to make a decision on whether they're going to seek a retrial on that count 2, the one that the jury were unable to reach verdict on. That decision will essentially decide whether or not we go to sentencing of Muhammed Amaaz. Of course, he's been found guilty on 3 of those counts, whether or not he'll be sentenced in the next few weeks, or whether or not there needs to be that retrial, which, as we know, could take a matter of months. Alex. Now, once they had decided to discharge the jury on count 2, which of course they weren't able to reach a verdict on, the judge thanked them. He told them that they would be discharged from jury service for the next 10 years. And he thanks them, saying, "You've put your lives on hold. It can't have been easy, and I'm very grateful to you." Now, Mohammed Fahir Amaaz, he will be held in custody until a time we find out more information as to whether CPS are going to be seeking that retrial. So we'll find that out perhaps this afternoon. It could be tomorrow or in the coming days. But of course, as we find out more information here at Liverpool Crown Court, we'll be bringing you live here on GB News.
Yeah, thank you so much there. Sophie Reaper outside Liverpool Crown Court bringing us the latest on that there. I mean, you know what really surprises me about all of this? And, you know, those boys played the victim card, didn't they? They played the victim card and made themselves out to be innocent, but there we go. Let's see how that evolves even more. OK. Sophie, we've got anything more to add to this story? Because, of course, you know, these officers were also dragged through the mud by the IOPC. They were under investigation themselves, or maybe a bit of a, you know, at least they've been vindicated today, perhaps.
Well, Alex, of course, it's been an incredibly complex case. In fact, the judge noted to the jurors that although they were initially expected to take around 2 weeks, instead it took 5. So incredibly complex, lots of evidence for the jury to go through during their deliberations.